Hello folks, this is Founder Layroon, Fantasy Grounds College. This is FGC Presents, exploring the FGU Map Tools. This tutorial, or non-tutorial, I'm just going to be exploring the different functions within Fantasy Grounds regarding map tools and some of the new lighting. So that's something we want to take a look at before the end of this session. By no means is this a definite tutorial or anything like that. I want to explore what's happening in the world of Fantasy Grounds. I've refrained from using the tools up to this point just because I wanted to make sure that they're further along with it. I don't want all the grief and the headaches. Obviously, there's still going to be a few bugs here and there, but I think the majority of them are worked out. So I'm going to go ahead and start checking things out. So just to preface things, I have some assets loaded here from the library. I just have the SRD. I have a free map pack put out by Chris McDermott of Game Tile Warehouse. This is a multi-dungeon map pack, and as you can see, a preview of it down here on the right-hand side window. And there's a dice roller table that you can roll that will call up one of these maps, so I'm just going to randomly call that up. And then I just wrote a kind of like an inline reference manual for the mapping tool, so I'm going to go through that and see how that plays out in some cases. So I do have a module that I created for learning the map tools, line of sight, and even the new lighting effects. So we're going to kind of touch on that. And like I said, I just have the SRD, and I have Chris's free module. I don't know if it's still available for free or not, but it was at one time. And then I also have our new map class 101 and 102 module that I'm working out of. So let's get started. So I'm going to, first of all, I don't know what map I want to work on, but I'm going to use the built-in table roll that Chris had built in here. So it has all the different maps in table format. So I'm going to go ahead and roll. And it's a 7. So let's see what number 7 brings us. Oh, interesting. So this map here is not going to be a perfect square, which is good because we need to understand how that works. So I'm going to put a grid on this and some effects and even try to mess around with the new lighting tools. So we'll see what happens. So first of all, I want to make sure this has a grid, and it looks like it does. It's a little bit off, so I'm going to adjust that, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to open this up on the top right, unlock it. I'm going to expand the image a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So you do that from the bottom right corner. And then I'm going to center the map. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can right-click and click on View, and then you can go Zoom to Fill, or you can choose Zoom to Fit, which is probably better, but Zoom to Fill will fill the entire screen, where this just kind of fills in the gaps. And then I'm going to readjust the window so when I get out of the tool itself, it's not so much of a gap here. So I'm going to go ahead and scrunch that up just a little bit more, and then see what it looks like. Yeah, there we go. So that is basically the first thing I do is kind of size the window up where I want it. And then to zoom in, you just click on the map anywhere and use your mouse wheel and go forward and backwards. I don't have any line of sight or anything fancy on here yet, so I'm going to work on that first. Fairly simple. It's like a corridor that's the shape of an arrow. You won't be able to draw a line of sight with the square tool, so you have to use your freehand in some cases. So this will be a good tutorial. All right, so we have this hall, and it has a couple torches in here, so we'll probably add some ambient light for that. But we have to have occluders on here, and that's the first step, and other than putting on a grid. So I'm zooming into the map right now, and as you can see, it's off just a tiny bit. So I'm going to go over to the grid tool, which is on the top right, and I'm going to nudge that over a little and maybe nudge it. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be nudged up, just over to the right a little bit. So you have this positioning tool here. There's a greater arrow, which if you click that actually will nudge it over quite a bit. And that kind of did it. You know, it nudged it over, but it went a little too far. So I'm going to use the little nudge tool which is only one. There we go. It's only 1 pixel. So that's one thing I wanted to fix. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I might want to nudge it down just one little thing here. There we go. So that should fix it. So when you zoom out, these should be lined up. See here, they're not lined up with the squares. And that could just be because of the way the map was made. So let me nudge that over. Or I could have it at the wrong, what do you call it? The wrong, is this a 76 by 76? That right there already looks wrong to me. Yeah, see, it throws it off over here. So I don't have the right grid size. So let me try 70 first. Let's see if that does anything. I think that's just going to make it too small. Yeah, I think it's going to be too small. So we're looking at probably 72, maybe 74. This one, it helps when you know the resolution. So sometimes when you purchase maps, the author will publish what they created this in. So it's important to know that. So if you go to your story entry, so if I go to story, and if the author provided it, they might have a, so here's the GTW map pack. And if I open that up, see, it tells you right here, it's 75. So I was close. See, it was sitting at 76. So make sure you know what the pixel size is, because that helps a lot. And that is a really optimal size for Unity. So I'm going to go with 75 by 75 up here. And that should technically fix my woes here. So when you get maps from the internet randomly, you don't have much control over that. So that's why it's good if you purchase maps or make your own, because you'll know the actual dimensions. Quite often you'll get a map that's skewed, like someone resized it, but they didn't make it square. So actually all these little lines here would end up becoming, you know, more or less off. So I'm going to move that over just a hair. And if you come over to here, it's off just a little bit, so that's not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and just nudge it back to the left a little bit, and that should tidy that up. And if you have to, you can go an increment like 75 in a pixel or whatever, so that might fix it too. So I think we're good enough. So we have the pixels lined up pretty well with the grid, and it's good to get a grid that's not already on here. So I don't have a grid painted on here, so that I was given the flexibility of being able to fix that. So this is just something that inherently happens when you make maps and such. So let me try 74.9. Maybe that'll fix it. Let's take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and nudge this down. And then nudge it over 1. And now it's centered in here, so let's take a look at over here. Does it make it worse or better? And kind of fixed it. So maybe I'll go with 74.8. Let's try that. That looks a lot closer. So when you get down to the finer, minute details of lining up the grid, you want to use this little arrow, not the big one, to kind of nudge it over. So it looks good over here, but let's see what it looks like over here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that little minor adjustment helped a lot. So I just went to instead of 75, went to 74.8. So sometimes you have to compensate for the thickness of the line itself. So that could possibly be an issue too. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and move this back just a hair, and then I'm going to go check over here and see what we're looking at. Yeah, see, it's just off a little bit. So maybe 74.7. Or 0.6, let's try that. Okay, so I'm going to nudge it down and see where we're at. Yeah, see that's starting to look even better. So it's just off a little teeny bit. So that's not too bad, because sometimes you'll get maps on the internet and they're just totally messed up. Yeah, that fixed it for the most part. So 74.5 is your ideal number. It says 75, which is close. But when you get down to the finer, minute details, yeah, see, this is way better now. I'm just nudging it over a couple and then down a little bit. Oh yeah, that is so much better. So 74.5 was the ticket right there, because that's exactly what you want to see. Now you'll find out that, you know, if the map is not square or it wasn't designed properly, you're going to get this problem. And see here, it's starting to come off here more. So maybe that wasn't the right fix, but it's closer than it was. So, all right, so that's good enough. We're close. We have a good feel on what we need to do. It's still fairly decent. I mean, you can go with 74.4, see if that helps a little bit, and then nudge it back a little. Yep, so that's there. And then if you come to the other side of the map, see, now it's pulling away from so maybe that adjustment. See, now if I adjust here and you come all the way over to the other side, you'll notice that it's off here. So I'm starting to think that 75 or 74.5 was probably the happy medium there. So you get to as close as you can. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact dead nuts perfect, but you know, you kind of want to get it close. Yeah, see, that's good here and in the center, but when you come over to the far right, it starts getting off a little bit. So that's just something you're going to have to learn to deal with when you're messing with maps. So if you get a map off the internet, try to know what the resolution is, and also don't think for a minute that someone hasn't taken and stretched it the wrong way. So that's something that happens quite a bit. So anyways, that's good enough for the governor. I think we're good to go there. So this is something that you're going to fight with initially when you're using Fantasy Grounds. You want to make sure that your map quality is halfway decent. You don't have to have a huge map either. That's one of the big problems that people have initially, is just way too many maps. So you want to make sure, way too many maps and way too large of an image. This image isn't too bad. It's at 75 pixels roughly, and it also is also made to where, you know, it's kind of set for Fantasy Grounds, especially Classic. This was made during a time when Classic was the thing. Okay, so now that we have the grid on, we can change the color of the grid. So it's kind of obnoxious at times when you have these grids on. So it can be a little bit, irritating at times. So what you want to do is, when you're in the map tool, you can actually change the tint of the map or the grid. So I'm going to use this color picker, and I'm going to hover over the torch here and see if I can get something close. So there you can see the lines a little bit better, and then you can, this A for alpha channel actually fades it out so it's not so bright, and it kind of gives it a transparency. And I went ahead and turned it down a little bit because I think it's a little obnoxious. There we go, about halfway or so, and then hit OK. So that gives you the option to change where you can see what's going on with the grid, but it's also not so bright to where it's obnoxious. So there we go. So there's that. So that's your first step. Let's put a grid on it. So the next thing is to go ahead and start building your occluders. Mostly, most of the devs, they'll make the doors first, or maybe they'll do the walls first. I usually do the doors. So I have 4 doors to do. So when you're working in Fantasy Grounds, ideally you want to just stick with one tool at a time. And I'm going to go and switch over to the line of sight utility. And I'm going to go to the wall, but then I'll switch over to door, because that's where I want to use the tool. Now I'm going to just make a brick or like a rectangle around this door. And I'm going to encompass most of the door. That way, when it's in play, it's easier to click on. I've seen people make some really skinny doorways, and when you're zoomed out like this and you're trying to click on it, it's annoying. So try to make your doors a little bit wider if you can. So I'm going to go ahead and take the square rectangle tool, which is up here on top, and I'm going to go about halfway through this portal here. So I'm just going to start at this top corner and just drag this over, and I'm going to go about halfway through that and fully encompass the doorway. So that's just how simple it is to manipulate a door. Now, if you want to move the lines or if you make a mistake, make sure you're in the selection tool. Quite often what happens is you're still in the drawing tool, and if you do that, you're going to draw more lines. So get out of the habit of doing that. Make sure you're on the select tool when you want to select a point and move it. So maybe you want to move this down a little bit. So I'll just select this point and drag it down, and then I'll select this point and drag it down. So now it's a little bit more aligned with the doorway frame. And same would go with here. Like if you really want to zoom in on this, you can, but it's really not necessary. It's kind of overkill. So there's my door. Now, technically, you can duplicate layers, but it's hard to do with line of sight. So I'm just going to go to each doorway and draw the door. I think a lot of people want to draw a shape and then move it around. It's harder to do with just the coordinates. You can do it with tiles and such, but it's really hard to do with any sort of success, I should say. So the first thing is I'm going to grab a corner. So I'm going to grab this, and I want to make sure I'm in the square rectangle tool, and I'm zoomed in a little bit too close. So try not to do that, because that's when you're starting to split hairs, and that's not what you're trying to do with line of sight. So if there's some reason where you have to have the accuracy in there, that's fine, so be it. But you don't want to do that all the time. It'll drive you nuts. So there's a door for that. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm in the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to pick one of these corners and going to left click and hold my mouse button down and drag the door out. So this isn't a new concept. I mean, this has been going on for at least a few months now. So, I mean, out of beta. So these concepts should not be new to most of us if you've used Fantasy Grounds. Although some of us don't even touch that. So that's kind of why I'm doing this, in case you want to get into it. And also, I'm just kind of exploring. So if you think of this as a tutorial, that's fine, but it's really not designed for that. Tutorial, I would really have my act together. I'd probably go through this a couple times, and then I would probably break it up into pieces. That way, it's not too big or too long of a video. All right, so here's the doors. So they're in place. Now I want to work on the walls. So the walls are going to cut through or dissect the doorways. So what I'm going to do is just draw a line, and I need to make sure I'm in the right tool, because right now I'm in the door tool. So let's change this to wall. And we're going to go with line, because we can't really draw a square. This isn't even squared up. It's at an angle. So that's something you have to notice. Okay, so now that we have the doors in there, let's go ahead and start drawing the walls. So the reason I chose these maps, because they're a lot simpler and smaller. They're a lot less complicated. So it's easier to show the concepts than trying to get into something that's very complex. So I'm going to go ahead and grab and take this little corner here, and I'm just going to click once, and I'm just going to use my arrow key to move over, and then I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to move up. I'm going to move the map up and over so I can click again. So here's that point. And the less data points that you create or that you have, the better off you are, because Fantasy Grounds has to calculate all those splines. And early on, when I was trying to do this, Smiteworks said, hey, you might want to cut back on those. So I did, and it does help. It keeps performance from getting out of hand. So here's a light here that I'm going to just touch right here. And then I'm just going to go up, and I'm using my arrow keys to navigate through this so it's easier. And then I'm clicking here once. I'm not holding the mouse button down. I just only when I need to plot a point. And here's a point here. And then I'm going to come down and do the same thing. I'm going to zoom out so you can see what I'm doing a little bit. And then back over here to this section. And you can go back and fix the dots if they're not perfect, so don't worry too much about accuracy. I mean, you don't want to create a bunch of work on the back end of it, but at the same time, you don't want to spend all day doing this either. So basically, I have the basic line of sight on here, and now I have snap to fit, so it magnetically will snap to there. And you double click, or you can hit escape once you've done that, and that stops you from drawing. Now go back to the select tool. This is where people go wrong. They'll try to edit their work when they're in the line tool. Want to make sure that you're in selection mode before you make any adjustments. And now if you want to, you can go through and take a look at where you plotted your points and see if they're good or they need to be adjusted a little bit. But generally, yeah, see this one is pretty good. I mean, you don't have to adjust something like that, but I wanted to show you can do that. So you go back later and fix your points. So like these might need to be adjusted because they're off a little bit. So that, and then I'm going to go back over to this one. When you get to these really fine points, these are the ones that are they're really hard to judge and see. So there we go. So that's not too bad. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfectly on there. And as a matter of fact, I'm right up on the wall, so you don't even need to be doing that. You could, technically, I should be off just a little bit, like maybe bring this line up and then take this line here and come back a little, because this is actually way too precise. So if you go like that, it's going to show more of the wall. So you don't even have to be right up on the surface of the wall. That's kind of a no-no, actually. You want to have a little bit of it showing, and that way you're not losing the wall. You want to see a little bit of it. So all I'm doing is stretching these lines out so that we can see a little bit of the hard work that the artist put into this map. So I'm kind of going back and just kind of backing it off a little bit so it's not so obnoxious. There we go. So I'm going to pull this one back out just like that. So it's kind of not perfect. I don't want it right against the wall. And then this here can be moved. Well, I guess not, but that's okay. So the main thing is that you don't want it right on the wall. That helps a lot. And same with this point. I'm going to bring that over. And then over here, I have this one that's too perfect. So you don't need it that perfect. It's really not necessary unless there's something that's absolutely critical. So here I've got a mess now. I have this point here where this is where they joined. So I'm just going to individually connect those together. There we go. So that kind of takes off some of that hard edge that you tend to, most people tend to do that initially. So I'm just letting you know that you don't have to have that very finite hard edge. You want to have a little bit of gap there so that when you reveal the area, the map itself, you can see some of that detail. So I kind of backed it off a little bit. So it's not entirely on the line. You don't have to do that. You just want it backed off just enough so they can see some of it. Otherwise, this is going to be a dark line, I think. So don't concern yourself with being absolutely perfect. That's one of the things mistakes I made. Okay, so there we go. That fixes that issue. Is lighting on live version or is it still on? Oh, it's live. How do I delete the lines inside of the door? I'm getting to that. So that's the next step. So it's kind of a weird thing, but you go to the line tool and you're still in the wall mode. And all you have to do is left click and make a little crosshatch and then hit escape or whatever. And what will happen is you just do that on all the doors. It makes an area so that it's easier for you to select the line and delete it. So I'm just making a crosshatch on the line that I want to get rid of. And what that crosshatch does is it pulls in the line that the crosshatch makes and that line that you want to get rid of. So now that I've made those lines, now I'm going to switch to select, and all I'm going to do is left click and highlight all these points and hit delete. And it actually deletes everything in that doorway. So that's why I went ahead and made all the lines first, and now I'm going back and just highlighting the 3 points and hitting the delete key. That's how you do that. And you do that with windows and such as well. So there are the data points. There's 3 data points here, and it will get rid of all the lines. That's why it does it like that. So that's how you get rid of the doors. I hope that helps. So one of the things is don't make the doors too small if you can help it. So you can see I took the whole door frame. And the reason for that is because when you're zoomed way out and you're in play mode and you want to open a door or you want to unlock it and lock it, you have to zoom all the way back in. It's really hard to see it. So try to make your doors a little bit thicker than normal. Okay, so now that I have the line of sight on, the way to check this as one way is to go to play mode. So right now I'm in the wall mode. To get this to work right, you want to get an NPC or a player character and put it on the combat tracker first. So I'm going to grab this acolyte. It's kind of this cultist cleric. It's just an NPC. I don't care what it is. I'm going to make it visible, and I'm going to drag it onto the map. And then once it's on the map, you want to take possession of it. So that means just single clicking on it just to make sure that it's connected from the combat tracker to the map. So do not delete tokens like that if you can help it. So if you delete a token, you want to right click and click on the tokens, and then you can, if you click on the token itself or right click on the map, you might get a dialog box here where you can actually delete tokens. There used to be one anyways. Right now I'm not in play mode, so you can't select anything like characters in play I'm in line of sight mode. You have to be in play mode. When you're in play mode, then you can take possession of the characters or any assets that you have on your table. So make sure you're in play mode when you want to fiddle around with characters and tokens. When you're drawing and in line of sight and such, which is a separate layer, you want to be in that, and then you can't grab the NPC when you're doing that. You have to be in play mode. And then when you're in play mode, you want to go ahead and turn on line of sight. So this little icon down here, it has an eyeball. So you set visibility, or you can turn on the lighting or whatever you want to do for this layer. So I'm in play mode, and you can enable line of sight by clicking on this eyeball. And now when you move this, it's going to move with the character. And as you can see, they can see a little bit of that wall now. Whereas before, I made it such a hard edge that they can't see anything. So that's what you want to do. And then on the doors, right now, it's set to close, but if you click on it and it spilled into another room, you'd be able to see that. So this isn't a good example of the doorways because I don't have an extra room to go into. But that is basically how that works. If you want to lock the door as the game master, you hold down the shift key. Make sure the door is closed first. So right now the door is open. I want to close the door, hold the shift key down, and click on it. And now it's locked. So that's how you lock doors from players, so they can't get in and out of that room without your permission. So they might have to unlock the door. They might have to do a stealth check, whatever. And then I'm still in play mode, so I have the acolyte right there. So that's your basic line of sight.
Can you have windows inside of doors? Like, no, that's not going to work right. That's a thing that I see people wanting right now, and it's not going to work that way. It's either going to be a window or a door. There's no half door. There's no half wall. The closest you can get to that is a window. And then, even then, windows don't allow you to pass through. So I'm not sure how you're going to handle that. But when it's a cliff or something that's above your head, you can put a layer of terrain. But there's no half doors or portal window or anything like that. So until they can come up with some way to show that and limit the lighting, I doubt that that's ever going to be a thing. Okay, so remember, I'm just exploring. I don't think you can do that. You cannot have two occluders stacked on top of each other. It's not going to work right. And if you do, it's going to be hard to remember which layer is which. So you got to be careful with that. So now that we have our line of sight, now I want to take and kind of get an idea of what to do with the lighting tools. So let me take a look at this NPC. So the NPC that I have right now is just a humanoid. So it doesn't have any specific things, but it does have a light cantrip. So what if they want to cast that spell at will? So it's 1 hour, it's touch, and it's one action. And it's a 20-foot radius. So if you touch one object that is no longer than 10 feet in any dimension, it will light it up. Or you can even cast it near yourself. The light can be colored as you like. Completely covering the object with something opaque blocks the light. The spell ends if you cast again or dismiss as an action. So if you cast it again, or if you dismiss it, and if you cast it on a hostile creature, they have to make a saving throw to avoid the spell being placed on them, such as a drow or something like that. So let's see what happens. I want to look at I'm going to go ahead and lock this for a moment, and I'm going to switch to the lighting tool. And we could either make this, make the tool ambient lighting for these two braziers. And we can also set a torch for the player. So that's what I want to do. But I want to make sure we're going through and using the manual, actually. So I'm going to open up the story templates, which is down here in my library. I made a module to put all the instructions in Fantasy Grounds instead of going to the website. I did that for convenience and for teaching. So now I'm going to go to the reference manual, which is something I made just last night. I'm kind of testing it out. And then I want to go through some of this stuff to see if it's actually valid. So there's a group in here called, let's see, it is Vision. See, there's the map tools, there's the blankness, Vision and ambient lighting. Here we go. So I made a reference manual to kind of help illustrate some of this stuff. So let's see what we got here. So this is the ambient light coding for the words or the verbiage. So if I open this up as a full image and not just a preview image, I can see this better. So this is a graphic that I made early on before they even released the light tool. So as you can see, these are the different types of syntaxes for different items. So your colors could be in here, and you could set flickering and all that kind of stuff. And then there's some notes down here as to what they do, and maybe they're a little different for each rule set. It just depends. And then there's some source links that I put in the module. But this is basically for putting on the lights on a character or from a spell. Like here, this person has a candle. Then you have to set dark vision if you want that, or if that comes with your race. This particular NPC does not have dark vision. So let's go ahead and close that, and let's go to the next page. Okay, so most rule sets support automatic vision assignment. So the rules support automatic vision assignment through the character sheets would be the NPC sheet or effects.
And then affects the core RPG, 5th edition, 4th edition, 3.5, Pathfinder 1 and 2, and D20 modern. So those are the ones that are kind of automated. So there is a wiki page link there that I put that takes you straight to the wiki, but I also took the information from the wiki and put it in here. So the recommended way to add vision to players is to adjust the senses on the character sheet. So Fantasy Grounds and the rule set will interpret the vision and apply the appropriate vision setting. So the vision setting by default is normal vision. So when you take, when I go to this token and I take this character, I'm getting normal vision. And then if you have any other senses like dark vision, true sight, blind vision, it will also support those. Some rule sets support additional senses, such as Devil Sight, and it's mapped to True Sight. Pathfinder 2 support for greater dark vision is mapped to True Sight as well. So they're called something different, but they have a similar function. So dark vision would be on your character sheet. And then when you define the vision on an NPC, in the senses area, this is where that would be. So that's, maybe I'll put a creature on there later. But to manage them, their effects are, there's ways to manage vision on NPCs or players. You can create a custom effect and share it with your players. The effect can be dragged onto a token in the combat tracker to apply it. For players, that they can also link effects to their actions tabs for a situation where a spell, item, or ability temporarily grants them a new vision type. So let's go with torch. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the character, or this NPC. I don't think it has a torch, but we can add it to this. In this case, it's an NPC. So let me move this aside. Actually, what I'm going to do is take this and bookmark it so I can close it. That way I don't have to keep going back to open it. And if you go over here to the effects over here on the right-hand side, so if you don't have anything on the NPC itself, you can drag over the effects. So if I go to this little running man, now you have the effects or the presets for the light. So if you need a quick way to do this and you want this guy to have a torch, let's add that to him. So this is an NPC acolyte. We'll assume it's a human. It has normal vision. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the effects area. And I'm going to drag instead of a light spell, let's just do a lantern or a torch. So I'm going to drag torch. And here's the duration and the radius. Now when I have this light here, let's see what happens. So we have to enable or disable the lighting. So now we have clarity as to where the light actually is, which limits the sight. So here's the difference. So if you don't have the lighting enabled, you're just going to see the occluder line of sight. If you have the lighting enabled, you will be able to see the torch. So you can kind of see this radius going on here. So if I take them to a hallway that's further away from the area over there, you can kind of see the torch light approaching. Now, I know you can fiddle around with the type of torch, so you can mess with the colors and all kinds of stuff. So that is for tokens themselves. And that's the easiest way to do it without having to code it, is just to drag it over and drop it on there. Now, you might be able to create an effect on the character sheet itself where they can initiate it. So if he casts light, technically he would be getting something similar to that. Except for you should technically be able to place it on items or other players too. And I'm not sure exactly how that works yet. But anyhow, it lasts an hour. That's what this D600 is the duration. So many rounds is basically. So that's how that works. So that will not be visible unless you have the lighting on or off. So it's important that you have that, and you have to have line of sight. Otherwise, the light bleeds through the walls. So it really doesn't help. It still limits your vision, but it doesn't block off the character from moving through walls and such. So unless you change it, you can pass through a window. And yeah, that's true. But I'm just saying there's no way to do a double. If you have torches, candles, and lantern in your inventory, you can equip them and it will turn the light on for the, yeah, that's, but I have an NPC, so there's no way to readily do that unless you have an effect on there. So yes, I agree with you. If you have a character, yes, you can absolutely do that. So let's so that's kind of like putting on the effect on a token. So you have this radius, and then I think you can even get into it even more by changing some parameters around. So if I select this token, I don't know if I can change anything on the token or not, but you supposedly be able to change colors and all kinds of funny stuff, but I'm not going to worry about it. But that's probably for the ambient light itself. So it depends on what you're doing. So that's just for the NPC token. So let's see what happens with these braziers. So I'm going to move the token. I'm going to go back to play mode, and I'm going to move the token up to the doorway. So now I'm going to do is start placing some stuff on the maps with in regards to this braziers. So I'm going to open up Fantasy Grounds for the reference manual that I made, and let's go to the vision, ambient lighting, and let's go to the adding lights to maps and tokens. Let's do that. Okay, that's NPC vision. What's this? Okay, yeah, that's the new graphic for that. Yep, that makes sense. And there's a video walkthrough. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so this next one is open your map, click and unlock the map, which we've done. And then it says turn on lighting and vision by clicking on the button that says enable lighting and vision. So that's what we've already done that because we wanted to look at the other thing. Adding lights to a map and tokens. Any map can have one or more types of light. So ambient lighting is something that represents natural light or outdoor light. This type of lighting will illuminate any part of the map which is not masked off by walls. For instance, terrain and shadow casters will all cast shadows based on the direction and the length of shadows defined for the map. You can adjust the color of the light, color of the shadows, and direction of the light and the length of the shadows. You can even illuminate, you can just turn them on or off if you want to illuminate a map. This may be best where shadows are already drawn on an existing map. So this would be something that you might want to do. So to add ambient lighting, you enable lighting and vision, which we've done. And then you navigate to the lighting mode on your image control, which is this up here. And this is to add light. The lighting mode toolbar reveals a second layer of toolbar options, which is this down here. Because as you move between the tools, you get different toolbars. It says that you would click on the option for the ambient light on the far right. So that is this, which is that. Okay, now it says select from one of the built-in preset values to choose settings which will work well for dawn, dusk, sunlight, or moonlight. So let's see what we have. So here's the presets, and let's go with moonlight. Okay. Or you can go with none. It's up to you. So that would be that. So limit where you want this to be applied. So if you have a mix of indoor and outdoor areas, you may want to mask the indoor spaces from the light. So what you want to do is add a, let's say outside, let's say it is dusk. Okay, that changes the light inside. We don't want that. So you click on mask, and that would cover or reveal whatever it is that you want. And this is our ambient color outside. You turn it on or off. And then what you're going to do with the mask is you're going to, obviously we're going to have dusk. And then we're going to take the mask and we're going to adjust it. You can adjust where the shadows come in. See, it's coming into the dungeon, and we don't want that. So we need to put a masking tool or a mask on this particular map. So let's see what happens when we do that. So yeah, that masks the area, and then you can take and unmask certain areas if you want. So let me see if Shift will do it. Yeah, so Shift will unmask the area if it was outside of the dungeon to where the dusk gets, where it gets in. So we don't have any of that going on here. So there's no light coming in now into the dungeon itself. Now let me go back to play mode and test our little dummy here. So yeah, it's working better now. So I don't have as much of that ambient light coming in. So that's good. The only ambient light I'm going to want is these torches. So now it says limit the light. So we've done that. Return to your ambient lighting. Click and add the mask. There are two modes available. There's hide area and reveal area. So in the mask itself, if you edit this and you go back to the lighting area, there's two modes. And then you can toggle darkness, or you can toggle the color, or you can just toggle the light on and off. So it just depends. So now that we've done that, and you can also turn off shadows if you want. And then you have your brightness, your dimness, your fall off. Where do you want the light to roll off of the light itself? So that's pretty cool. So there's two modes available. It says click on an area and then drag rectangles on the map to mask off those areas. So what it was saying is that you can mask off the areas that you don't want to have the lighting. So if you want to do something like this, and then you would, you could freehand it too, so you don't have to do everything by hand, but or with squares. You can hold the Alt key and draw the area that you want to exclude from that particular effect. So that's just a rough idea. And then it says to mask an area that is not rectangular, you hold down the Alt key, which is what I did. You can switch back and forth from hide and area reveal to complete your ambient light mask. So now adjusting color. So light and shadow colors can be assigned by using the color picker. You can pick the color, use the sliders, and you can change the opacity. Okay, so if you want a different type of light or anything like that, you can use the sliders and you can change the colors and such. So that is kind of cool. All right, so the next thing is, let's see, add lights. Okay, so enable lighting and vision. So this case, we're going to add just a light. So not the ambient lights, but actually like a torch or something that's hanging on the wall. Navigate to the lighting mode on your image control. So I'm in lighting mode. And now it says the lighting mode toolbar reveals a second layer of options, which, yep, that's all these. Select from one of the built-in preset values to choose the settings that will work for you. So we need to make sure that we are in ambient lighting, and I need to pick a preset let's see, am I doing this right? That's dark vision. Okay. So that's token light. So that's what we want. So we are selecting in the token light. I'm going to use a torch, or we can use a lantern or a candle. I think that this braziers would act more like, maybe they would act more like a let's see, lamp, torch, maybe more like a lamp. Okay. Add light, delete the light. So lighting is additive. So multiple light sources in the same area will add together. Add a light source to a token. Okay. The method allows the GM to add or remove a light source from a token. Enable the lighting, navigate there, go to the toolbar, select the tokens that you want to add light to. Okay, so that would be like whatever you want to add. And then you select from one of the built-in values like candles, torches. So it just depends on what you want to do. So let's add a light here to this. So let's see. So going to add we want a pulse, and preset is going to be a lamp. Let's see. Ambient lighting on. Okay. Know that's on. We don't. That's for outside. So we need to add one for token vision, token light. So that's what we want, token light. And then I want the lamp. So what is it? Wanting me to actually add a token. Okay. Well, let's see what we got here. So I'm going to go to assets, and let's take a look at a brazier. And now we're going to go to the lighting tool, and we're going to select token light. Turn down the animation. We want this to be lamp-like effect. And then we're going to, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go with hopefully something kind of bright. Let's try that so it's more obvious. And let's see. There we go. And make sure that's on the right layer. So it's a lit brazier is the name of it. And it says add a light source to a token. So both player tokens and NPCs can carry around their own light source. As the token moves, so will the light. Tokens can have multiple light sources attached. So we enable light vision. We navigate to the lighting mode, which we've done. The toolbar reveals a second list, which we've done. And then select the token that you want to add the light to. So I'm selecting it. select from one of the drop-down lists, which I'm doing. So I'm going to call it a lamp. Adjust the values as needed, and then click on the add light at the bottom. Okay. To remove it, click the remove light. So I wanted pulse and speed down. Select from one of the built-in preset values. Yep. Did that. I'm on the brazier. Now adjust the values as desired and then click add light button. And let's see. Okay. Reset, torch. Okay. So that is that. Huh, interesting. So there's adding vision and then adding light. So which method works better? So it works different in every rule set, or it works in every rule set. Token lights can be added this way, however, must be reapplied every time the player token is added to a new map. See the selection below. So adding a token light using an effect. So the player must be on the combat tracker. You need to use a custom effect. Yeah, that's for character sheets. Okay, cool. All right. So basically, you're just going to be adding lights to items, or you're going to be adding them to your NPCs or to your players. So it's almost three separate things. So that's interesting. So there's an effect thing, and maybe we can put some kind of, yeah, you could put night vision, or that's from line of sight though. And then there's your line of sight tool, and there's your lighting. So it's going to take a bit to get used to. I was just exploring this, so I need to practice on adding lights to the map. I get the token and the character ones; those are pretty simple. It's just having the correct area selected for creating these lights. So you have one for your ambient lighting. You have one for your token vision, for the vision of a player or NPC. And then you have the actual token light, which I was trying to add to this particular thing. And I think I did. I think it's just that I'm not used to it yet. So, and then having this on here makes it hard because the actual lighting interferes, so it's hard to test it. So let me take this person and I'm going to take them off the combat tracker. Okay. So to test the lighting, I think it's better to have more of an open thing and not have other lights interfering. So that's that. I don't think I need that light layer, so the brazier, so I'm going to delete that. Don't need it. Okay. So now back to the light tool, back to token light. I'm going to go to lamp, and I want it to pulse. Okay, I get it. So I need to practice on that a little bit. So if you guys are watching, I am still exploring the tool. I'm pretty new to it. I haven't messed around with Fantasy Grounds, the line of sight or the tools yet, because of the it could be fairly complicated, and if you're not sure what to do, or if you're missing some of the other steps, that could be a problem. So I will come back to this and we will revisit this. I've been on for about an hour now. I will come back on when I have mastered it, and I will make a tutorial out of it. I'm just going to let this one ride, and I'm not going to do anything fancy with it, but at least you get the basics understanding of where to look. And I also am still working on the module that goes with it, so I'm going to have some kind of a tutorial picture so it's more evident, and maybe just use the same map over and over. I'm not going to use this map, I don't think, but I'll use other maps to help illustrate what we're trying to show. But for the most part, thanks for joining me on your Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll call this. You need to enable it that the light source shows. Yeah, I looked at that, and it's on or off here. And in the master, it shows, let's see, it's on there, and there's an ambient light mask. I think I'm just not doing it right. So yeah, I agree with you. Where can we get the reference manual? I'd love to have it. It's actually something I made for myself. I only did it because I didn't want to keep going back and forth to the internet. If you want to PM me and Discord, I'd be willing to give it to you. It's not completely done. It's about 90% done. I want to have a basic map built into it, but the actual reference manual is built into it. And if I go to library, yeah, it's just Fantasy Grounds College tool that we use. There's a reference manual, and this goes over line of sight and such too. And as you can see, it's inline, and it has it needs a little work. It's got some things that are broken in it, but for the most part, the data's there. And I have a reference area, so if there's some brushes and tile stuff that you can use. So reference and resources, these are all the links. So yeah, it's pretty ready. I mean, it needs a little work. So this here would have been handy if I just used my own work here. So adding lights to maps and tokens, it's all right here. So yeah, I see. It even shows it here. But yeah, it's just a matter of getting used to the tool itself. So it even shows, here's some links to the walkthrough. So yeah, if you want to PM me in Discord, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to call it an afternoon, and hopefully you guys can get a better handle on it. But yeah, I agree. I need some more practice. So just sat down to start learning this. Oh boy. Yeah, it's okay. Map settings, make sure to have it set on for light, etc. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, so the what you call it, the module that I have is still kind of in beta. It's not completed, but if you really want it, just PM me in Discord, and I'll send it to you. There's nothing in there that's proprietary. It's all stuff from the wiki. So if you don't want to keep going in and out of Fantasy Grounds, that's why I created it, so that you can use it as you need it, and have the links there handy if you need to go to the wiki, and then also to have a few graphics. And this also goes over line of sight as well. So yep, no problem. We'll take care. And the beginning part of it's probably more useful than the end. I'm kind of stumbling around. I didn't want to make this a tutorial. That's why I call it the untutorial, because I'm just kind of messing around. But I wanted to share that with you, so you guys can see for yourself. It takes a little practice and some time. Yep, no problem. Take care.